I've lost all objectivity with regard to former Director Comey, in part because I was one of the folks that was defending him 2 years ago when all of this stuff started to happen. But he's turned out to be every bit as duplicitous and sanctimonious as folks told me that he was. So, we're just asking questions. We're trying to get a transcript of what really happened so that folks are treated equally under the law. And I think folks looking at this objectively and fairly see that.
All right, that is John Radcliffe. He is out when it comes to Comey and giving him benefit of the doubt. What about Congressman Jim Jordan, who's now spent, I guess, 12 hours with him? Congressman, are you more or less impressed with Comey?
Well, obviously less. I mean, with Jim Comey, it's all about Jim Comey. And, Brian, it seems the rules just don't apply to him time after time. You can go all the way back. He took the decision away from Loretta Lynch and decided he was going to determine whether Clinton was prosecuted or not. He doesn't tell President Trump when he's in a meeting with him 3 days after the FBI has interviewed Mike Flynn and the president and James Comey are talking about Mike Flynn, and he doesn't tell anything to the president about Mike Flynn lying to the vice president and not being honest with the FBI agent. So this guy just does, I think, everything wrong throughout both investigations, and now he's out there talking about how he's wonderful every single day.
And he's calling out Republicans, saying, when are you guys going to stop standing up to the president and going back to bat for the rule of law? He called you guys out.
Yeah, one of the big things he talks about is how the FBI shouldn't be political, but this guy's been, since he's left, the most political animal I've ever seen. And I'm wondering if in any way some of the people the hardworking folks at the FBI, if they're a little put off by the fact that the guy that used to be their director is out being so political now. But yeah, that's what he's become. He's out to what do you say? He's never going to vote for a Republican, I think, until as long as President Trump is still the president. So he's gotten real political.
Well, a couple of things. He, on that case which you brought up with the president and telling the president ahead of time, your national security advisor might have had some dealings with Russia. He says, "Why would I ever do that? I'm in the middle of a counterterrorism investigation." What's your answer to that?
Maybe because if you're so when he testified to us the other day. He said they were so concerned because the vice president was saying something they knew to be false because they had listened to Kislyak and Mike Flynn's conversation. So they knew the vice president was saying something false, and the vice president was saying he was told by Mike Flynn. So they quickly get Mike Flynn in for an interview. McCabe calls him, "We need you to do it. We don't want lawyers there. Let's do it now. We don't have to alert Justice or the White House counsel." They go over 2 hours later, interview Mike Flynn. 3 days after that, literally 3 days after that, James Comey is in the Oval Office with the president having dinner at the White House. And Mike Flynn comes up. A different subject about Mike Flynn, not about any investigation. And Comey says in his memo, he says, "I did not comment at any point during this topic, and there was no mention or acknowledgement of any FBI interest in or contact with General Flynn." He said, "The president didn't bring it up." When I asked him, I said, "Did you bring it up?" He said, "No, I didn't." And I said, "Why not? If you're so concerned that you rush into it for an interview with Mike Flynn because the national security advisor to the commander-in-chief is saying things that are not true, why wouldn't you tell the commander-in-chief? Why wouldn't you tell your boss?" And Jim Comey is, one more example of Comey keeping information to himself for whatever reason and not doing something I think everyone understands should be obvious. You should tell the commander-in-chief if the national security advisor to him is not being honest.
Well, he just doesn't. Obviously, I'll connect the dots. He thinks the president's corrupt. He thinks that there was contacts with the president and Russia. So he puts him in the same. He puts everyone in as suspects, even though he told the president he wasn't being investigated.
7 times in his memos, 7 different occasions in his memos, he underscores references the fact that the president's not under investigation, but he lets the American people believe that the president is. This is one other thing that drove me nuts about Comey. He called the Clinton investigation a matter. When it was obviously an investigation, she was under investigation, but he went out and told the American people it was a matter. But when it came to President Trump, who wasn't under investigation, he allowed the American people to think that he was. So he misled this country on both investigations, and yet somehow we're all supposed to believe he's a Boy Scout and he's never done anything wrong.
He also says it doesn't matter. He doesn't care where the dossier came from, that if it was paid for by the DNC or Hillary Clinton. He says it doesn't matter. I mean, how would that not matter?
Yeah, it does matter because it was the basis for the FISA warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. And even the guy that was referenced in the FISA application, Michael Isikoff, even he says the document's just a complete joke and not true. So come on, I mean, when a reporter certainly not a conservative reporter, when he says, this thing is not true, it's not accurate, and the director of the FBI doesn't even know about Christopher Steele, know about the dossier and all those things that he said, again, just underscores how wrong this whole deal was from the get-go.
And before I leave this, I just want to get you to weigh in on what Michael Flynn experienced yesterday as we read these transcripts. Essentially, this judge wrongly accused him of committing treason, selling out his whole country. He later said, okay, I got things confused. And then when he got up there, he basically said, you want to delay this because you're probably looking at some incarceration, even though the prosecution didn't recommend any, and the top half is 6 months. What's going on here?
Yeah, I don't know. I do know that, I'm sure CNN's not going to correct the fact that the judge was, talking about treason when, frankly, he shouldn't have been. Mike Flynn was not representing any Turkish interest while he was NSA working in the administration. So I don't know. All I know is the way things were handled with General Flynn are not the way they're supposed to be handled. And Director Comey knew that, understood that, and yet they rushed this interview, got information from. And when you read that 302, and the notes taken when Peter Strzok and another FBI agent interviewed General Flynn, I don't think it's as clear cut as everyone is saying it is about General Flynn misleading them about his conversations with the Russian ambassador. So he pled to that. General Flynn misled people. He pled to that. There's going to be some kind of action. We'll just see how it shakes out in 90 days. Okay,
last thing on the Russia thing. It looks like a document has emerged that the president signed off to pursue a Moscow tower in 2015. Yeah. That's not what we heard.
Yeah, I've not seen that document. I was at a speech last night back in Ohio. I have not seen that. I'll take a look at the document and find out what's involved there. I did see the news break this morning. Have not.
If it's true, are you disappointed?
Well, if they said one thing and there's something else, but again, I haven't seen it, so I just don't know anything about it, and I'm not sure what the president said or what his attorneys have said. So I just don't know anything about it, Brian, or have a comment.
All right, this shutdown, it looks like the Democrats aren't going to give it all, and the president looks like he's starting to give when it comes to the $5 billion for the wall. Here's Chuck Schumer on the proposal of taking this extra $1 billion and putting it towards border security. Cut 17.
Leader McConnell proposed the bipartisan Senate DHS bill, which has $1.6 billion for border security, plus a $1 billion slush fund for the president to use for his radical immigration agenda. I called Leader McConnell and told him we would not accept their $1 billion slush fund and that our offers to fund the government remain.
So where do you stand now, Congressman?
We should do the $5 billion. We should do exactly what the president said last week in the Oval Office. I thought the president was clear. I thought particularly when he told Nancy Pelosi that, Nancy, we don't have to do this in private. It's called transparency. It's a good thing. It's good for the American people to see this. I think we should stand firm on the $5 billion. We should put it in the House bill. There are the votes there to pass it, I believe, in the House. We should pass it, send it over there, and let Mr. McConnell and Chuck Schumer work out whatever they're going to work out.
See, I don't think you have the votes.
The American people.
These lame duckers, these losers and the lame duckers and the retirees aren't back. Evidently, they're not coming back today.
I like that term. I've never really. I've called lame duck session. I never heard the term lame duckers.
Yeah, thank you.
A new term.
I expect to hear it on the channel later.
I do think members will come back. After all, it's their job. Even if they are retiring or even if they lost their election and, won't be back next Congress, it's still their job. They still represent the folks in their district. And I do think we can get enough folks back. And if we do, I think they're the votes to pass the $5 billion. I hope that's what we do. We're going to find out more. I've talked with some of our leadership the last few days. And this is what the American people elected us to do. This is common sense. So let's stay here and get it done.
The president tweeted out, in our country, so much money has been poured down the drain for so many years. But when it comes to border security and the military, the Democrats fight to the death. We won on the military, which is being completely rebuilt. One way or another, we will win on the wall. Just not yet. I just don't know what leverage you have when you guys come back in the minority. How does this movie end?
We don't. We don't have leverage. We should go now. Why don't we do now what we're going to do when we get the majority back in 2 years? I mean, think about that. We got the majority now, for goodness sake. Let's do it. We should have done it back in March. We all said this. We should have done it back in March, but our leadership didn't want to go there. We have to do it now. We have to do it now.
Do you blame the Speaker? Do you blame Steve Scalise? Do you blame Kevin McCarthy?
No, I blame our leadership. So many times we're right on the cusp of victory, and we're just afraid to go out there and actually play the game. Too often we just forfeit before the referee even blows the whistle. So let's actually play the game, have the debate. After all, we have a guy in the White House who's pretty darn good at conveying a message to the American people. Why don't we use that advantage? Why don't we put the money on the bill, send it over there? Let's have a debate. Let's have a debate. And if Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell can't figure something out when the bill gets to them, that's their fault. But let's do what we're supposed to do in the House.
Congressman, your mission now is to find a way to fund the government, if possible, and have a great Christmas. Can you do both?
We can. You have a great Christmas too, Brian.
All right. Thanks for everything, Congressman. Appreciate it.